In a season of relentless economic downturns arising from Naira's life and death grapple with the United States dollar, widespread theft of Nigeria's crude resources in the Niger Delta continues to hang around like a bad smell. Despite all efforts at mounting a sustained assault against this economic scourge, the perpetrators of this crime appear to be undeterred as ever. Businessman, media personality, and politician Dumebi Kachikwu joins us now to look at what efforts are being expended in this direction at the moment by the government and how stakeholders in the oil and gas sector can weigh in as well as the search for an enduring solution intensifies. He would also be talking about the state of Nigerian politics. Welcome to the morning show, Mr. Kachikwu. Now, considering the persistent issue of oil theft in the Niger Delta, I would like to start with what, in your opinion, you believe has been the most significant hurdle in the government's efforts to curb this problem effectively. And how do you think the current administration's strategies to tackle this oil theft should differ from those of previous governments? What innovative approaches should be explored in this situation?
Okay, good morning. Thanks for having me once again. I think this government, like most governments, came into office without really understanding the depth of corruption facing NNPC and the oil and gas sector. And immediately they had the briefing. They saw what the former president was doing in working with private security contractors. These governments came in at a point where the contract the government had with these private security contractors was elapsing, and they had to make a decision to renew or not to renew. But what they were then faced with was the fact that the contract and what was happening there was in the public domain. So you had a lot of people who believed that this is a contract for the boys, and as such, anybody and everybody who had any connection to the villa and to politicians was making a bid for this contract. And so government for a period were confused as to what to do. But eventually, I think sanity has prevailed. The president has decided to continue with what the former president was doing, which is to renew the contract. But the challenge they now have is the fact that because there are a lot of people who sit as contract for the boys, those people will do anything to undermine the contract and undermine the pipeline networks. They will damage it to show that they are in control of those areas. They will do anything. And so there's a renewed onslaught against government infrastructure in the Niger Delta region. The NSA is trying to do a yeoman's job in coordinating the different security services, in trying to let them understand that this can no longer be business as usual. The president is trying to put his foot down, but I will say it is difficult. We all know as a people that if the government can get it right, our balance of trade will improve. The issue we have with our Naira and the devaluation of the Naira will dramatically improve if we can increase our output on a daily basis. It will have a huge impact on our economy. And the only way we can do that is to stop immediately the theft of our crude oil. Now, if you look at those in the oil and gas sector, they all know those who are doing this. But because this has become, the normal in Nigeria, people know the people, everybody keeps quiet. The bankers who bank their money, their neighbors who see them building big houses, buying fancy cars, we all know these people. But because we've accepted it as the people are enjoying their own, it's their time, leave them, nobody speaks about it. There has to be concerted effort from everybody, from the media, from the public, from government, especially where it concerns the military. I expect that this government must get right what other governments have failed to do, and that's making sure that our military are people of integrity who do the jobs they're supposed to do, who protect the people, who protect our infrastructure, who are not engaged in the illicit trade of selling stolen crude oil. I expect that this government must get it right now.
All right, Mr. Kachikwu, I'd like to just, I want you to touch a bit more on that, even though it's been the song that everybody has been singing, you know, each time a new administration comes on board. We had President Muhammadu Buhari, a general, but who couldn't fix the Niger Delta and the oil theft the way that Nigerians would have wanted. But we have now a Democrat, you know, and a strategist who knows his onions as far as politics is concerned. But then how will he handle the military aspect of it, given the fact that he was never a general or in the military? Even though part of what President Tinubu said was that he was determined to do it because he's not involved in the shenanigans going on in the oil sector. Do you think that this can count in his favor ultimately?
Well, I think it's about the willpower, right? The president meets with service chiefs weekly. It's difficult to understand that a service chief who you are meeting with, who is giving you briefings on security situation, might be in cahoots with those who are stealing crude oil. But this is what has gone on in the past. So this president needs to be very, very careful in how he manages these people. How do you ring fence them? How do you ensure that your service chiefs are not doing what some service chiefs did in the time past? It's about the willpower that says that if I hear, if I see, if I have any knowledge of any infractions on your part, I will immediately relieve you of your duties and ensure that you are prosecuted. We still have situations where vessels are impounded and they are released immediately. What is the president doing about it? Are those reports getting to him? So these are some of the issues that you have. Until we have the attitude that suggests that we have zero tolerance towards any crude oil theft, total zero tolerance, you will not see any real improvement. In India, a few weeks ago, you had some people who were able to tap into a pipeline, and I saw how this was so big news in India. That's a few 400 meters pipeline, big news. And how they dealt with that in Nigeria. They're talking about 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 80 kilometers, undersea cables, complicated technology they're using to steal crude oil. And for everyone, it's normal. Oh, is the boys doing their thing, fighting themselves? But this impacts on all of us. We're all suffering. We don't have light. We don't have good roads. We don't have infrastructure. We don't have good schools. We don't have good hospitals because our common patrimony is being stolen by a few individuals. So the body language of the president must speak to this. It must be clear to all and sundry that there's zero tolerance to this. Anybody at all, doesn't matter who the person is, that's involved or engaged in this, they must be immediately arrested and prosecuted. If the president has given contracts to private security contractors, he must give them all the tools, all the support that ensures that anybody who does anything to destabilize their work, that the person is immediately apprehended. That's the body language we all need to have as Nigerians, that we cannot accept a situation where our common patrimony is continuously stolen by a few individuals. We must support government, we must also support ourselves in fighting this scourge.
Okay, Mr. Kachikwu, thank you for setting the tone of the conversation. Mr. Barry Ndiomu, who is the interim administrator of the Presidential Amnesty Program, called for legal reforms to provide stiffer penalties for entities involved in oil theft. I want to know what your thoughts are on this. Do you believe that maybe stricter legal measures could serve as a deterrent? Also, when we look at the illegal oil connection line that was uncovered and had been in operation for about 9 years, how concerning is it that such operations can continue undetected for so long? And what improvements do you believe are needed in the surveillance and monitoring systems when it comes to oil theft in Nigeria?
Well, two things. I believe that if Baron Diomo were to be doing his job, which is educating, which is elevating some of the people in the Niger Delta area, teaching them new skills, having them economically emancipated, getting these people educated, that it will help to a large extent in fighting this scourge. But we've had a lot of people who go into that office and who don't do their jobs, and because of this, the people don't know their right from their wrong. It's not so much about laws or stiffer penalties. It's about implementing the small laws that we have. If those who are supposed to enforce laws are those who are breaking laws, where does that leave us? So we keep on talking about laws in Nigeria. What have we done with the few laws we have? Let's start enforcing those laws in the first place. And in enforcing those laws, we can then start thinking about refining those laws, making them better. But when we're not even enforcing the laws, it becomes a problem. The law enforcer is the lawbreaker. What do? If you amplify the laws, if you make the law stricter, is it stricter for the person who is not even breaking in the first place, or the person who is enforcing and he's the one breaking the law? So it's not so much about making laws stricter and what have you. It's about the fact that people are not doing their jobs. The Niger Delta is in disarray. There's no infrastructure there. They don't have good schools, good hospitals. The people live mostly in abject poverty. They have not followed the NDC master plan. There's need to upgrade to improve that master plan and to follow it assiduously. This is not being done. I was just saying to someone before I came to the studio, what do I expect of President Tinubu? In a 4-year term, I expect that he becomes the president of modern Nigeria, who looks at all the issues militating against us and says, if this is all I'm known for, I will aggressively target these issues and improve them. Processes, systems, I will ensure that I put in place a constitution that ensures that we are a nation under the green, white, green of our flag. I will ensure that I will not just speak towards creating jobs, but I will start putting in place the processes, the policies that ensures that not just government, but private sector, the middle class, that they will all are able to start new businesses that caters to job creation. As president of Nigeria, I will now start looking at the fact, if we look at our balance of trade and we look at the fact that Naira is failing, what are we really doing about it? We must export more. How can we export more if we don't have power? How can we export more if we don't have industries? How can we export more if we don't have common facilities, if we don't have the infrastructure, industrial zones everywhere with power and all the facilities for people to produce? So we cannot just keep on borrowing like we're doing. We must start putting in place the policies and supporting the policies with the real things they need, like finances and what have you, to ensure that Nigerians can thrive. Ultimately, it's about how you see Nigerians. If we continue to see Nigerians as liabilities, we will not do the right things. If we continue to see our assets as a people, as oil and gas and solid minerals, we will not do the right thing. But were we to see Nigerians as a true asset of Nigeria, then we'll start planning for Nigerians. Then we'll start doing what is right by Nigerians to help all of us as a people.
All right. I'm quite familiar with your thoughts and convictions on the whole subject of subsidy and subsidy removal. And I'd like to ask you 2 questions on that. First is to assess the success, in quote, of the subsidy removal from President Buhari and executed by President Tinubu in 5 months. What are your thoughts? Do we see any success? Has the removal blocked holes as they claimed? Has it reduced consumption as they say it would? Has it reduced taking fuel, petrol product to neighboring countries as we were told? Have we made more money? Are we making more money that are traceable and trackable in 5 months of subsidy removal? That's one. The second part will be that, given what is happening in the international crude oil market, do you think that one way or the other, a form of subsidy has returned, given that people say that if there is no form of subsidy, we probably will have hit about 700 to 800 naira per liter by this time? Has it been sneaked back into the Nigerian system without the government admitting so?
Okay, good question. Lots of questions. So I'm getting older, so my brain is not. I can't. This thing. But let me take your questions. In the interim, we were able to reduce our consumption as government stopped subsidy. But like you said, I've always opined that what the government should have done was to freeze subsidy for a period of 3 to 6 months while government put in place better processes and systems to reinforce that subsidy to ensure that those people who abuse subsidy were arrested and prosecuted, and ensure that subsidy going forward will be better managed, right? This government didn't do that. Essentially, what happened was that in coming to me that subsidy was reduced, the president said, okay, you know what, let's remove subsidy, right? It makes sense for us to have more money. But what do you do with the money you have? You start giving 10, 15, 20,000 naira to people and all that stuff. You start squandering this money and not putting this money into critical infrastructure, right? But they did not factor in the fact that crude oil prices might rise, the naira will lose value, prices of petroleum products will go up, economy will be destabilized. So essentially what happened, when they realized that petroleum prices were going 600, 700, 800, 900, the real prices, government had to start putting subsidy back in place without telling the people. And now, when you start putting subsidy back in place, because we are selling the naira, we're selling the petroleum products at lower prices right now as against their real prices, people still start moving those products out of Nigeria. So we're back to square one. Government is suffering, the people are suffering because we have not planned properly. What must we do again is about willpower. Who are the people who are allocated petroleum products? How do they move the petroleum products? How do you move from point A to point B? Where do you need to ring fence? Do you need to ring fence the process of allocation? Do you need to ring fence the process of transporting the products? Do you need to ring fence the process of selling the products at the pump? Where do you need to put in place the right processes and structures to ensure that subsidy stays within Nigeria? That is what this government ought to have done. If they were to do that, Nigerians will not be suffering the way they are suffering today. But because they did not do that, we are suffering as a people. God did not make a mistake in putting crude oil in Nigeria. Okay, but we are now telling God that he made a mistake by removing subsidy. We are making a mistake. Okay.
I mean, we still continue to find out whether this subsidy removal would be for the greater good or would have just been a mistake as we continue to see these events unravel. But Mr. Kachikwu, given the introduction of advanced technologies like the Falcon Eye system, which I'm sure you're familiar with, being used to combat oil theft, what role do you see technology playing in the future of securing Nigeria's oil resources? How effective do you think such digital solutions can be in curbing this issue? Or do you just see a plethora of challenges being faced when it comes to implementation?
Well, technology works when you have ceteris paribus, when all things are equal, then you can speak about technology. But in Nigeria, all things are not equal. When you have a downtrodden people, who are suffering, who are neglected, who are living in abject poverty, whatever technology you put in place, the people will work against that technology. They will defy the technology, right? But if you have a situation where where all things are equal, then technology will work. Which is why government, NNPC, why they are bringing human interface into what they are doing. But you have to marry human interface with technology. Ultimately, we'll get there at the point where government seriously implements a master plan in the Niger Delta region that ensures that people are educated, that people live a quality life, so that those people will see that it's in their best interest to protect critical infrastructure. That's when technology will start working. But when the people see you and technology and sees government as the enemy, technology cannot work. Technology can do nothing for you. What does technology do? See. Somebody has to react. Somebody has to respond. That's a human being. Not so? So we can only speak about technology in terms of relationship between technology and the human being. And we'll get there when we'll start doing the right things as government and as a people.
All right, Mr. Kachikwu, as we begin to wrap up, I'd like to ask you, pointedly on politics. This government is settling down. It has won at the courts. It has earned its legitimacy. It will look like the opposition seems to be sulking from their laws. Do you think that the opposition, in general, is playing that role of keeping the government of the day on its toes? And of course, that will include your good self and your own party. 5 months down the line, this government has settled down. What should be the role of the opposition going forward? The government has just signed into law 2.1 trillion appropriation, supplementary budget for the last 2 months of the year. What are the thoughts from the opposition? Part of that is the 5 billion naira earmarked for presidential yacht. House of Reps says it is illegal, but Navy has confirmed that yacht indeed has been delivered. Who signed it? Who appropriated it? How are things working? But yet it looks like the opposition is a bit silent. What are your thoughts?
First and foremost, the courts don't confer legitimacy on a government. The people confer legitimacy on a government. The elections divided Nigeria like Nigeria had never been divided before. If the president wants legitimacy, he will start by taking some steps in the right direction. And it starts with firing the INEC chairman and management of INEC because they caused confusion in the body polity by mismanaging the process of the last elections. The Supreme Court wrapped INEC, wrapped them lightly, but there was enough, we all know enough to know that INEC did not do right by Nigerians. Whereas all indications, all indices suggest that the president won with the numbers out there because the opposition were not able to show how the president lost. So the numbers show that the president won, but can you imagine a situation if INEC did not have the failures they had in midwifing the last elections? Do you think we'll have had the issues we're having in Nigeria today where people have lost faith, lost trust in the system? No. So what must the president do? I expect that immediately after the Supreme Court judgment, that the president, in his speech addressing the nation, should have, in that speech, had an addendum where he said that I'm relieving the INEC chairman, management of INEC, of their duties. That will have sent a very, very strong signal that whereas he might seem to have benefited from them not doing their duties, but he understands that the sentiments of Nigerians speaks to the fact that INEC must be dealt with, that the right thing must be done by INEC, and in going forward, you cannot appoint people there who don't do the right thing there. That's one. You spoke about the supplementary budget. What kind of supplementary budget do we speak about? A budget that was passed within 48 hours by the National Assembly? What kind of country are we? 48 hours they passed that supplementary budget. How did they debate that budget? How do you look at the issues in that budget? How does it affect Nigeria and what have you? They passed the budget, signposting again that this is going to be a rubber stamp National Assembly. We will look at the issue of the presidential yacht. Again, if they have come out to say that that yacht had been supplied, how have they breached the Appropriation Act?
All right.
Is that an impeachable offense or not? Who do you impeach, the former president or the current president? Or who do you go after? Who are those who were involved? How do you supply something where there's no appropriation whatsoever for that? How does that happen? And we come out on television to speak about it and say it was already supplied. Does that begin to make sense to us? No.
Mm. All right, then, former presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress. Thank you so much for being on here, Mr. Dumebi Kachikwu.